What's going on, Dolphins? It is your boy Dillon, and today is day 18 of training camp. I do believe yesterday was 17. Obviously, yesterday they just did a walkthrough. Today there actually is a practice, and so we are going to go through that. My hair, as usual, is crazy and a mess. This is what happens when I grow long hair. Anywho, so two articles, though, that I want to read from Alan Pupar. One of them actually has to do a little bit more with the roster projection. So let's actually start there and some of the roster battles that still remain after they've cut down from 90 to 83 or 80 players. So let's see. Updating roster battles. The Dolphins are now less than a week away from having to determine their initial 53-man roster. We're now midway through the final week of Miami Dolphins training camp and done with the second of 3 rounds of cuts. By next Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern, the Dolphins will have to join every team in the NFL at a 53-player limit on the active roster. So it's a good time to take stock of where the roster stands, and how things might shake out between now and next Tuesday afternoon. Okay. Excuse me. As you see, we start with quarterback. All right. So on the roster, we currently have 3. Tua Tagovailoa, as we know, Jacoby Brissett, and Reed Sinnett. Likely number to be kept is 2. I agree with that. Ultimately, I think what's going to happen here, my guess is, obviously, Tua is going to be the starter. I do think Brissett will end up being the backup. And then they're going to try and put Sinnett on the practice squad. That's my guess. So we'll see. Locks or near locks are Tagovailoa and Brissett, Tua and Jacoby. Long shot being Reed. Like I said, I think who will end up being put on the practice squad. I think that's the plan. Breakdown. The only question here is whether the Dolphins will end up keeping 3 quarterbacks, though the relaxed rules in terms of practice squad elevations for game day make it more likely it will be 2 again. Active roster projections, Tua and Brissett. So he doesn't say it here, but I'm going to go ahead and I have said it, that, Sinnett will likely be on the practice squad. Running back. On the roster, there are currently 7. Salvon Ahmed, Myles Gaskin, Patrick Laird, Malcolm Brown, Garrett Dokes, Jordan Scarlett, and fullback Carl Tucker. You could also technically list somebody like Malcolm Perry there, or I know he's on IR, and he actually as it turns out, because he was put on IR yesterday, Lynn Bowden Jr. is actually going to be out for the entire season. But those are guys you actually could list as running backs as well if you wanted to, right? Let's see. Likely number to be kept, 4. I agree with that. Locks or near locks, Gaskin, Ahmed, and Brown. Yes. I would say Dokes is probably also a lock, just because, so normally I would say Dokes is going to be a lock just because he's a draft pick. However, we know that the Dolphins have already cut 3 of their own draft picks from the past few years. And in fact, each of their first 2 seasons, they not only cut, in their first 2 seasons, so year 1 and year 2, they cut one of their rookies. So one of their rookie players from that draft class. In 2019, they cut Isaiah Prince, right, who was a 6th round pick from the 2019 draft. And then in 2020, they cut both Curtis Weaver and Chandler Cox. Chandler Cox was a 7th round pick from 2019, and Curtis Weaver was a 5th round pick from 2020. So in both of those seasons, they cut a rookie player from their own rookie draft class. And they didn't bring him back. Now, if they were to cut Dokes, there is a possibility they do try and put him on the practice squad, and that's definitely possible. But for example, Larnell Coleman and Garrett Dokes, our 7th round picks from this year, are two players that I've said for a while that I think could potentially end up getting cut at the end of the day, thus continuing the trend of them cutting. But we'll see. I mean, at this point, though, Larnell Coleman, I think, is a little bit more of a lock, especially since they've already gotten rid of several offensive linemen. Dokes, though, will be interesting, right? And I don't know. I think it's likely that he would survive waiver wires, clear waiver wires, and get to the practice squad, but I don't know. It's possible some other team might want to try and, take a flyer on him. So, and then if that happens, then obviously, then that means it's another failed draft pick for the Dolphins, right? That player could go on and have a good career elsewhere, but if it's not for the Dolphins, and if you guys ended up cutting him, well, then it would just be another draft pick that this Dolphins organization missed on for their organization, for the Dolphins, and more wasted draft capital, and, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll see how that plays out. That's obviously something to keep an eye on, right? And that's part of the context. See, that's one of those things that I point out that people's like, oh, you're just being negative. No, I mean, it's the truth. I mean, and if you're uncomfortable with the truth, well, that's your problem, not mine. And it's important context. Because, if they were to cut Dokes and then, either they don't bring him back and put him on the practice squad, or he gets picked up by another team, we have to have the conversation about the misuse of resources, or, whatever. So, it is what it is. Anyway, so Laird and Dokes are on the bubble here. Long shots are Scarlett and Tucker. The thing is, I actually think, my guess is they will keep 4. I think Gaskin, Ahmed, and Brown are locks. And I'm going to say Dokes would be the 4th. If not Dokes, then I think probably Scarlett. I don't know. I think if it's going to be, if they do keep 4, I think Dokes is probably the guy. But anyway, let's see what his breakdown. The possibility certainly exists that the Dolphins could end up keeping both Laird and Dokes. That is true. I mean, they would be keeping 5 then, if that's the case, in addition to Gaskin, Ahmed, and Brown. I don't think they're going to keep 5 running backs. Though the feeling here is there are bigger needs for roster spots at other positions. Laird has been a dependable backup running back and special teams player since joining Miami in 2019, but Dokes' bigger upside as an offensive player might make the difference here. And he was a draft pick, right? We didn't draft Patrick Laird. We just picked him up. Active roster projections, and I agree with this. I think this is likely the most likely situation. Gaskin, Ahmed, Brown, and Dokes. Tight end, we have 6 on the roster: Mike Gesicki, Chris Myarick, Adam Shaheen, Durham Smythe, Hunter Long, Sithan Carter. Likely number to be kept, 4 to 5. I think 4 is what they're going to do. Personally, I think they'll probably go with 4. Let's see, locks or near locks. Gesicki, Shaheen, and Long. Yeah, I think that's right. On the bubble, Smythe, Carter, and long shot, Myarick. That totally makes sense. I don't see anything. And I think that Smythe, it would likely be that 4th guy. I think that's my feeling there. Breakdown, it's practically unheard of for a team to keep 5 tight ends on the 53-man roster. I mean, especially, too, because you have to think of, some of these guys, they could get on the practice squad. Like the receivers, on the other hand, that's actually a position where I might say, man, if you got to, keep 8. Because Matt Collins and Kirk Merritt should be on this roster. But, so you got, then you have Jakeem Grant, too, would be the other one. which would, I think, with Jakeem, with all those guys, I think that would put you at 8. So, well, you know what? Let's wait till we get to wide receiver before we do that. We're still on tight ends. But so, you know, wide receiver is a position where you might want to try and keep an extra guy, you know, because let's keep it real. Kirk Merritt's a player that I just don't see clearing waivers. I could virtually guarantee that if they were to cut Kirk Merritt, some team, one of the other 31 teams, is going to claim him. So, and I just, you know, I have a feeling that's one player that they're looking at, that other teams are looking at the Dolphins roster, hoping that they cut. Or, you know, a number of these wide receivers, though, right? That's the thing, and that's obviously been one of the hot topics with this team. Let's see. So here are 2 things to keep in mind. Maybe so one thing I was going to say is that, you know, if they get one of these guys on the practice squad, like a Mayorik or a, you know, Carter or something like that, they could elevate him if they need to. Maybe a trade is in play at this spot, and then there's the injury that has sidelined Carter since the preseason game at Chicago. The Dolphins have been able to delay making a tough call at this position, but that will end, and maybe they keep Carter on the initial 53 and then put him on IR the next day, or simply put him on IR for the whole season if the injury is deemed serious enough. Or the Dolphins do the unusual and end up keeping 5 tight ends. Active roster projections: Gesicki, Smythe, Shaheen, and Long, and I agree with that. Let's see. Okay, wide receiver. So let's see. I think. Okay, let's go through this. So on the roster: Jakeem Grant, Matt Collins, Kirk Merritt, Devontae Parker, Preston Williams, Will Fuller, Albert Wilson, Malcolm Perry, Khalil McLean, Kai Locksley, and Jalen Waddle. Likely number to be kept 6 to 7. I think there is even a possibility they keep up to 8 here, if I'm keeping it real. So let's see. Locks or near locks: Parker, Waddle, Fuller, Hollins, and Wilson, he says. Okay, so that's 5 right there. I'll agree with that. Although I think there's an argument to be had that Williams and Hollins would be swapped here. Williams would be the lock or near lock, and Hollins would be on the bubble. But okay, let's go with that. So 5. Then on the bubble, you have Williams, who I think would be making it. Merritt, for sure. Like, as I'm going through, that's how I do it. So if you're keeping 7, that's 7 right there. The problem I have with that, and this is part of what makes the wide receiver room so tough, okay? But it also is part of what makes their prioritization a little bit frustrating, because you didn't actually have to go out and sign Will Fuller, who's one of your most expensive players on the roster with a $10 million cap hit. You didn't have to go out and get Jalen Waddle, right? You went out and you overloaded. They did it, right? So they caused this problem. You know, and look, sure, it's a good problem to have, but you're probably going to lose some of these guys. And when you look at some of the context of some of these players, I mean, Kai Locksley and Khalil McLean, I don't care about those guys. Long shots, whatever. You know, those guys were just random pickups. We didn't invest any real, you know, draft capital or top dollar into those guys like we did with Will Fuller or Jalen Waddle, right? Jalen Waddle cost us 2 first-round picks, the number 6th overall pick, and then the pick we traded away to move up to number 6. So 2 first-round picks, and then obviously Will Fuller is one of the most expensive cap hits that we have on the roster, right? So, I don't care about Locksley and McLean. They're insignificant. But when it comes to Grant, 1, he was a draft pick for the Miami Dolphins, so you do have that. There was draft capital investment. It's true that he drops more passes than you would like, but let's keep it real. He doesn't drop that many. People like to say he's just got stone hands. I don't agree with that. He has... And somebody posted it, I saw it on the Dolphins stream, on a Bleacher Report. He had 54 targets and only dropped 4 passes last year. That's actually not that bad, right? That means he caught the other 50. Also, I'd like to say, for the record, that a lot of people say that the deep shot that Tua took to Jakeem Grant, I believe it was, I want to say it was against the Bengals, where it was near the end zone, a lot of people want to blame that on Jakeem Grant, but I don't, and I don't see how you could, because when you look at the full context, Jakeem Grant's fast. He was open, right? So he's super quick. He was open. He was wide open. Like, he had a couple steps on, I think there were 2 defenders that were following him, a corner and a safety coming over for help, I believe. But he had a couple steps on him, so he was open. The dude's fast as hell, and you could see he was running at full speed, and he even had to lay out for the pass to try and get it. So my point there is it was overthrown. That wasn't on him. Tua did overshoot him. Now, I think that if you know, the part of the important context for why he was so inaccurate on his deep passes last year obviously had a tremendous amount to do with his health. So that's not really his fault. But in that particular play, the reason why that one went incomplete was not because Grant didn't do what he had to do or give it his best shot. It was because Tua overthrew him. Does that mean that Tua is terrible? No, it's the context of the situation, and that's the reality. Anyway, and then Malcolm Perry, only a 7th round pick, but that's another one of our draft picks that could potentially be cut. Now, it is possible that he does get put onto the practice squad, but if another team picks him up, or if they just choose not to, then again, you have to have the conversation about another missed pick. Even though it's a 7th rounder, right? Still another missed pick. So, yeah. Anyway, continuing on. Breakdown. This is similar to what's going on at tight end, because the Dolphins have a surplus of NFL wide receivers, but they'll have an extra week to make a decision at that position if they want, because Fuller will begin on the NFL suspended list. It won't count on the active roster until week 2. Yeah, so, but they would have to cut somebody eventually. Maybe it wouldn't have to be a wide receiver. They are kind of, lucky in that regard. That's one, silver lining to the Will Fuller being out week 1 thing, is since he doesn't count towards the roster, they could actually keep one of these wide receivers and then, cut one later, or cut another player later on, depending on how things shake out after that first week, right? So, anyway, this is another position where a trade is a distinct possibility, which is true. So the Dolphins could land a late round draft pick instead of having to expose an NFL caliber player to waivers. Here's the thing, though. I don't think that's going to happen. Because when you look at the guys that they would trade, you have Devontae Parker, who's got a big cap hit, who has, obviously had injury and availability issues, right? So I don't see a team trading for Devontae Parker. The Dolphins are not going to cut him, right? So I think he's going to be on the roster. Preston Williams is another possible one that people have talked about. When it comes to Preston Williams, his big thing is his injury history, and I don't think anybody... I think he probably has the highest probability actually of getting traded, because he does have a ton of upside, and as long as he can stay healthy, lots of teams would love to have him. So I think they could maybe get a mid to late round pick for him, but still probably not. And I don't think the Dolphins are going to cut him either. But then you have Jakeem Grant. In that case, in the Jakeem Grant case, and I think the reason why no team has offered anything to the Dolphins for him, even though they have had him on the trade block for a while now, is because of the fact that teams are not stupid enough to do that, if I'm keeping it real. Because they know that at the end of the day, what will end up happening is, most likely, they're going to cut him, right? So... and I think teams are just going to bank on them cutting him as opposed to, ponying up draft capital for him. The exact opposite of what we did with Greg Little. Greg Little is the same thing. He's a player that we could have possibly actually gotten after he was just flat out cut. Instead, we decided to give a 7th round pick for him. Anyway, continuing on, active roster projections, Parker, Waddle. Let's see. So he has Parker, Waddle, Hollins, Wilson, Fuller, Williams, and Grant. So he has 7, but he has Grant being the one. And look, that is possible. Grant is the one. right? And part of the reason why I would keep Grant is because I don't want Waddle back in special teams coverage at all, or returns at all. So, you know, and I do personally like Grant. I've always liked him. I thought he was great at Texas A&M. I thought that obviously he had Patrick Mahomes there with him, but I thought he was great. He was electric. He does drop a few more passes than I would like, but I think that he's a phenomenal returner, and I think he's a good receiver, and I think he could actually be a lot better if just used properly. So anyway, that's interesting. Obviously, though, if I'm keeping it real, I would keep Merritt over Grant. If I'm keeping it real, because I just think I think Merritt actually gives you a ton more potential upside and adds a lot more value overall to this roster. But in that case, I still would not be using Waddle on punt or kick returns. I would be using, Igbenogany and some of these other guys that are on the roster, right? So anyway, all right, offensive line. Interesting now. So on the roster, we have Matt Skura, Michael Dieter, Cameron Ton, Robert Jones, Solomon Kinley, Robert Hunt, Derval, Kyros Neto, Austin Jackson, Liam Eichenberg, Greg Little, Jesse Davis, Adam Pankey, and Larnell Coleman. Likely number to be kept here, 8 to 9. And that's about right. Because you're going to have your starting 5, and then you're going to want at least another, probably at least 3 backups, right? So let's see. He has locks or near locks: Dieter, Kinley, Hunt, Jackson, Eichenberg, and Davis. I agree with that. So that's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 right there. So that's 6. Because look, you're the way it's looking, it's going to be Jackson left guard. Let's see, Jackson left guard, right? Then you're going to have Kinley at left, or I'm sorry, Jackson at left tackle. That's why that was sounding wrong to me. Kinley at left guard, Dieter at center, Hunt at right guard, and Eichenberg or Jesse Davis at right tackle. I think there's a good chance it could be Eichenberg to start the season and Jesse Davis be the swing guy, or Jesse Davis maybe start the season and then they hope that eventually Eichenberg takes over and then Jesse Davis can be the swing guy. But I do agree that these 6 guys are likely to be locks. So then we have on the bubble, Jones, Little, Pankey, Coleman, and Skura, and then long shots, Tom and Kyros Neto. Let's also note, though, that with Kyros Neto, there is a roster exemption for him because he is a foreign player, and he came over through the NFL's foreign player, program or whatever. So they actually will probably keep Kyros Neto almost no matter what. You feel me? So because he doesn't, he's just there. He can just exist, and it doesn't count towards anything. It doesn't count towards the active roster or the practice squad or anything. There's literally a roster exemption for him. So I would venture to guess that Kyros Neto will remain with the Dolphins, and so that would put you at 7, but already right there with these other guys here. However, we need to focus on, what actually counts towards the roster. So let's see. So we have 6 out of those guys. I'm going to get to 8 by saying Larnell Coleman, because he's actually shown some of that potential upside in training camp. And he was also a draft pick. Pankey's been terrible. Greg Little sucks. Skura's going to be the other one that I'm going to have as a backup, because then you have Jesse Davis, who can play almost any spot. Skura is your backup center. Coleman is a backup tackle. And there you go. Now, and then I would say maybe Robert Jones makes it to the practice squad. I mean, maybe Greg Little or Cameron Tom makes it to the practice squad. But yeah, so anyway, that's how I feel about that breakdown. But I don't know, man. This is definitely the weak link on this Dolphins roster, especially, God forbid, if we suffer any injuries on the starting offensive line. it's definitely the weak link. It has the potential to be an Achilles heel for this team, and so it is still my biggest concern. Yes, but and I keep it real, right? So they had an impressive performance against the Falcons. They earned 2 wins from me there, but we got to keep the context because it was nothing but backups essentially, and so on and so forth. So, and the regular season is an entirely different beast, as we know, than the preseason. So, and I said, they can earn a couple more wins from me right off the bat if they get wins, and they don't even have to be like convincing wins. If they can just be solid, close game wins, but they're battling throughout, and they're putting up a good performance against our division opponents, then yeah, they can get that, those next couple, the 10th and 11th wins from me. But they're gonna have to go out and earn that. They've earned 9 wins through the preseason. Now they're going to have to earn a little bit of it in the actual season when it gets a lot tougher. This is going to be a really tough call beyond the first 6. Who are the players who have gotten first team reps in practice? Skura might have an edge because he's got the most extensive center experience of anyone on the roster, and Coleman has the benefit of being a rookie draft pick. Active roster projection, so he has Dieter, Kinley, Hunt, Jackson Eichenberg, Jesse Davis, Little, Skura, and Jones. So he has 9. I don't think they're going to keep 9. Like I said, I think they'll keep 8 on the active roster and then put a couple of these guys on the practice squad. Skura and Jones. I mean, see, that's the Skura, Little, and Jones. So that's the thing. Like, I think Jones will end up going to the practice squad. Skura, yes. Replace Little with Coleman, and Little maybe goes to the practice squad. The rest of it I agree with. Defensive line, on the roster we have Jason Strourbridge, defensive end Adam Butler, John Jenkins, Emmanuel Ogbah, Zach Sealer, Jonathan Ledbetter, Christian Wilkins, Benito Jones, Tyshun Render, and Raekwon Davis. And let's just say this is another one of those roster or position groups where there's another potential rookie that could be cut. This time, though, it's Jason Strourbridge, who was a 5th round pick in 2020. So that will be part of the context for him if he is to get cut and at least not put back onto the practice squad. And there's a high potential for that. So let's see. Because look, they have 10 right now. Likely number to keep 6. I agree with that. And Pupar has him on, the bubble here with at least 5 guys ahead of him likely to be locks. And so, look, we have Ogbah, Sealer, Wilkins, Davis, and Butler. That's 5 right there as locks or near locks. I agree with that. But see, that's the thing, though, is when and I actually agree with this overall evaluation. I think Strourbridge, Jenkins, and Jones probably are the bubble guys, with Ledbetter and Render being the long shots. I agree with how he stacked it, but the thing is, I definitely would say that John Jenkins and Benito Jones are ahead of Jason Strourbridge. So that's 2 other guys. So that's, in my mind, there's 7 guys ahead, and they're probably only going to keep 6. Now, again, they could probably get him to the practice squad, and they would have to, right? Now, let's keep it clear. Getting these guys on the practice squad, if they do, like Garrett Dokes, Larnell Coleman, Jason Strourbridge, right? Malcolm Perry, any one of these guys, if they cut them, and then they get them on the practice squad, that means they are on the verge of being, a bust and wasted draft capital for the Dolphins, right? Because that means they're falling down the roster, and they did get cut. They just got put back on a practice squad. Now, if they get stolen by another team before they get to the practice squad, then it's automatically at that moment a fail for the Dolphins, even if that player goes off to be great or have a good career with another team, because then that means that it was with another team and not the Dolphins. But if they get put on the practice squad, then they're close. The Dolphins just then have to figure out where they fit in because you only get so many years on the practice squad. I think it's like 3. I think 3 is the limit. You can only have 3 years on a practice squad as a player, and then your eligibility goes away. So, you know, if they keep falling down the depth chart, then either they're going to spend 3 years on the practice squad and then, you know, leave, or they're going to get cut before that. So it's still, you know, a handful of your own draft picks that you got to figure out what's going on with. And even Christian Wilkins is a draft pick that still needs to show more, right? So, and he was a first rounder. So, you know, it is an important part of the conversation. It's not me just being negative because I want to be negative. No, it's important context on the conversation. When you're if you want to do full in detailed evaluation, you can't leave important pieces of the context out. So, breakdown. If anyone is wondering why the number likely to be kept is so low, it's because the Dolphins rarely use more than 3 pure linemen on the field. There should be quite a free-for-all for the final 1 or 2 roster spots at this position. Yeah, and I think 6 is probably about where they will keep it. I think that's right. Active roster projection, so he has Agba, Sealer, Wilkins, Davis, Jenkins, and Butler. And so, right, like I said, that's about what I would think that Agba, Sealer, Wilkins, Davis, and Butler, I agree with those being as 5 locks. And then, like I said, Jenkins or Jones, and he puts Jenkins in here. But Jenkins or Jones, I would take over Strobridge. But then that leaves one of your draft picks potentially getting cut and maybe possibly only making it to the practice squad. So, you know, that is concerning for their draft classes. Linebacker on the active roster, 12. Jalen Phillips, Andrew Van Ginkel, Duke Riley, Vince Beagle, Calvin Munson, Sam McGuavin, Bernardrick McKinney, Landon Roberts, Shaquem Griffin, Jerome Baker, Josh Harvey Clemens, Brandon Scarlett. Likely to be kept 7 to 8. Locks or near locks, Phillips, Van Ginkel, McKinney, Baker, Scarlett. Okay, interesting. Okay, I agree with this for the most part. I would, so... Let's see, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 he has in the locks or near locks. I mean, I would say probably Iguavin over Scarlett for locks or near locks. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, that's 5. I think at least 7, maybe 8. So then I would put Scarlett on the bubble. I would swap Iguavin and Scarlett. I would also swap Riley and Munson and or no, hold on. Landon Roberts. No, okay, I'm sorry. I would swap Scarlett for Roberts. That's 5. Locks near locks. Then I would swap Riley and Beagle for Griffin and Munson. So Roberts for Scarlett, and then Munson for Beagle, Griffin for Riley, because then I would probably keep Phillips, Van Ginkel, McKinney, Baker, Roberts, Iguavin. That's 6. Iguavin, Griffin. That's 7. And if you're going to keep an 8th, I would go with Munson. Because to me, they've shown the most and really stuck out. So, but maybe you guys disagree, right? Anyway, so that's what I would do. So let's continue on. Breakdown. Stop us if you've read this before in this story, but there are tough decisions that are going to have to be made here. Beagle would have been a lock or near lock based on his production in 2019. Well, that's the thing, but his injury, his injuries have derailed him, especially recently because he's been in a walking boot. First with the Achilles injury last year, and now with an injury to his other foot, so maybe he ends up on IR again, which is possible, and that's a way that they could like stash him, right? Active roster projections: Phillips, Van Ginkel, McKinney, Baker, Scarlett, Riley, Iguavin, and Roberts. So he has him keeping 8, and you know, as I just mentioned, I would do things a little bit differently. All right, defensive backs on the roster: 16. Cornerback Noah Benogany, Eric Rowe, Javon Holland, Byron Jones, Xavier Howard, Justin Coleman, Brandon Jones, Jason McCourty, Jamal Perry, Nate Holley, Javaris Davis, Nick Needham, Crevon LeBlanc, safety Fedulum, Tino Ellis, and Trill Williams. Likely number to be kept. So he's obviously, this is corners and safeties all together. Likely number to be kept, 10 to 11. Locks or near locks. Benogany, Rowe, Holland, Byron Jones, Howard, Coleman, Brandon Jones, McCourty, and Needham. With Perry, Javaris Davis, Fedulum, and LeBlanc on the bubble. Holley, Tino Ellis, and Trill Williams as long shots. So I agree with this for the most part. Although I would put Trill Williams on the bubble over pretty much any one of these guys. But probably if I had to choose, I would take Fedulum out and put Williams in his place. And so for me, if I was going to project the roster, I would say Benogany, Rowe, Holland, Byron Jones, Xavier Howard, Justin Coleman, Brandon Jones, Jason McCourty, Nick Needham. That's 9. So we got to get to at least 10. Trill Williams is 10. And then I'm going to say if I go 11, it would be Crevon LeBlanc if I'm keeping it real. That's how I would do it. All right, this is yet another tough call to make, and one major question is whether Fedulum's special team contributions, he was a captain on that unit last year, will be enough to help him keep his roster spot. Perry's versatility might come in handy for him. So he has Howard, Benogany, Byron Jones, Rowe, Brandon Jones, Holland, Coleman, McCourty, Needham, Perry, and Fedulum. So he keeps 11. As I said, I would have, if I was going to keep 11 instead of, I would have LeBlanc and Trill Williams instead of those guys. That's how I would do it. Specialists on the roster, 3, Michael Pilardi, Blake Ferguson, Jason Sanders. Likely number to be kept, 3. No suspense here for the breakdown. Obviously, active roster projections, Pilardi, Ferguson, Sanders. And barring an injury, that's obviously right. So, alrighty. That actually was quite a bit to get through. And that's probably going to end up being the vast majority of this video, because the next section is the actual training camp stuff. And that's going to be pretty quick to get through. So, yeah, let's go ahead and dive right in. So now we are moving to Alan Pupar's observations from the August 25th practice, day 18 of training camp. Let's go ahead and get into it. So highlights, lowlights, observations from the August 25th, it's 25th. That was a typo in that line. At the Baptist Health Training Complex in preparation for the preseason finale against the Bengals. Dolphins attendance report not spotted were Albert Wilson, Javon Holland, Adam Pankey, Sathan Carter, and Javaris Davis. And Devontae Parker wore a red no contact jersey. So, so yesterday, obviously, one of the big storylines was all the wide receivers coming back. But this adds to the context a little bit. Albert Wilson obviously was not there. Albert Wilson was not there. And Devontae Parker wore a red non-contact jersey. Brendan Scarlett returned after missing a few days of practice, and Xavier Howard returned after being out Tuesday because of an illness, which was good to see. And he obviously, or not obviously, although some might say obviously, but he apparently is the word that I was looking for. He apparently had a really good day in practice, and the defense did as a whole. All right, so let's move past that video because I will get copyrighted for it. Hopefully it didn't catch very much. Yeah. Anyway, so Holland worked on the side with strength and conditioning coach Dave Paloka at one point, wearing boxing gloves and throwing punches because Javon Holland has been nursing some kind of injury. I'm not sure what it is with him. I don't recall seeing anything. Practice was conducted under unique conditions as construction near the training facility. Okay, stupid ads. Facility produced dust that blew in because of strong winds. The offensive punter Michael Pilardi operated mostly against the wind throughout practice. The first team offensive line remained the same: Austin Jackson, Solomon Kindley, Michael Dieter, Robert Hunt, and Jesse Davis. And I think that that's probably what we're going to see week 1 of the regular season. Linebacker Landon Roberts, who came off PUP last Thursday, got some reps with the first team defense. Parker took part in 11 on 11s. Khalil McClay made a nice catch on a Jacoby Brissett pass down the middle. The defensive line appeared to have the better of the offensive line in a one-on-one pass rushing drill, though Jesse Davis had a strong showing as he stonewalled Emmanuel Ogbah and Jason Strawbridge. Xavier Howard picked off Tua on a pass downfield intended for Adam Shaheen in 7-on-7. Rookie running back Garrett Dokes continued to show struggles catching the ball, dropping a short pass from Brissett in 7-on-7. Quarterback Igbenogany broke up a pass downfield from Brissett. Good for him. Jakeem Grant, Jalen Waddle, and Malcolm Perry took turn fielding punts. Okay. Tua threw a beautiful pass downfield to Waddle in the second set of 11-on-11. Brissett had a nice completion down the middle to Kirk Merritt, who continues to make plays at receiver. Byron Jones stripped the ball from Salvon Ahmed on a running play. Howard came back with a beautiful pass breakup on to Waddle on a Tua pass down the left sideline. This just in, Howard is good. Yeah, obviously. If he's on the field, he's going to produce. Running back Jordan Scarlett dropped a catchable short pass from Brissett. It's not been a great day for the running backs. Waddle, Grant Perry, and Igbenogany took turns returning kickoffs. Will Fuller practiced for a second consecutive day, but did not take part in team drills, so still moving him along slowly. Safety Eric Rowe provided blanket coverage against Gesicki on a deep pattern, the same kind of work he produced for much of the 2020 season. And look, I have to admit, he has actually developed quite nicely into a tight end covering safety. Roberts stuck running back Jordan Scarlett at the line of scrimmage on a running play and then made sure to let the offense know about it. Jason Sanders had a second miss of training camp on a field goal attempt, this one from 53. And like the first miss, it clanked off the upright. It was windy today, so to be fair to him. Nick Needham broke up a pass from Tua to Waddle over the middle after Waddle looked ready to bring in the catch. Rookie free agent Trill Williams came up with a leaping interception on a deep sideline pass from Brissett intended for Merritt. Rookie Jalen Phillips got to Brissett for a would-be sack in 11-11. That's good to see. Howard had a pick six against Tua after his throw was tipped up by Back Collins and then Needham. Let's just say it was an impressive practice for Howard. Brissett had a beautiful throw to tight end Hunter Long down the middle over the linebacker, and Cameron Tom got the snaps at right guard, an 11-11 drill where Robert Hunt was dealing with a contact lens issue. Interesting. Okay, well, at least it wasn't like an actual injury. He just had to get his contact lens sorted out. All right, so like I said, the training camp portion of today's video was going to end up being quite short, which is good because this video ended up being about 40 minutes, a little over 40 minutes in actual length. But that was, I'm actually glad though that he did have that roster breakdown, because I thought that was really good and I agreed with it for the most part. But, and, you know, even his breakdown of practice today, like, you know, Trill Williams and Kirk Merritt and, you know, some of these guys I think definitely would be better value on the roster than some of the players that he had. But that's just me. And, you know, unfortunately, I don't get paid to be a scout. I wish I did. Because that would be cool. It'd be a lot of fun. And if I actually did it for a living, then I would be watching all of these guys on tape very vigorously, and it would be my job, and I would, you know, have the resources available to me to actually put in, you know, good time and studying tape. Same thing with college prospects and stuff, right? So, like, you know, I would be a lot better at it. I think I'm actually pretty decent at it with the limited resources and stuff that I have available to me. I think I could be a lot better. But anywho, and I am working on that, and I am learning. I'm learning a lot from Reason's channel, and that's why, you know, I participate there a lot, and you see me there a lot. But yes, and it's also a lot of fun, a lot of good conversations. So, but anyway, there you have it. That's where I'm gonna end it. I hope you guys appreciate my perspective. If you do, make sure you hit the subscribe button, make sure you hit the like button, make sure you hit the bell if you want to get the alerts. Share my channel and videos with your friends and family. Leave your questions, comments, and concerns down in the comment section. Of course, as always, follow me on Twitter at Dillon Tartaro. And with that, I am out. I'll see y'all soon. Phins up.
Bye.